Call to order the meeting of the ASRB Monday, July the 7th at 4:34 p.m. Can we have a roll call, please?
Chair Lindsay,
Present.
Vice Chair Kamra,
Present.
Member Middleman,
Present.
and members Delgavio and Sullivan are noted absent.
Okay. Do we have any changes to tonight's agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda and no desk items.
Okay. Now is the time when any member of the public in the room, which is empty, or online, is invited to make a comment on anything not on tonight's agenda.
I see no members of the public online.
Okay, thank you. And we're moving quickly. There's one item on the consent agenda tonight, meeting minutes of June 16th. Does any member of the board want to pull this item for discussion before we move to approve? Aye.
Hi.
ASRB?
Do you want a specific?
Yep. Again, does any member of the board wish to pull this item for discussion, or should we just move to approve these minutes?
I second.
Chair Lindsay,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kamra,
Yes.
Member Middleman,
Yes. Okay, all right, moving on to the public hearing. We have one item on the agenda tonight. And this is 4216 Jefferson Avenue. Yep. So can we have presentation from staff, please?
Yes, thank you. So I will be introducing the project at 4216 Jefferson Avenue. The project includes the construction of a new main residence, detached garage, and other site improvements. The property is about 15,000 square feet. It's in the R1 zoning district. It is a vacant lot with road frontage on both Jefferson Avenue at the bottom of the property and Southdale Way at the top of the property. The site is dominated by steep slopes that exceed 35 and 50%. The property slopes significantly from the top at Southdale, which is kind of on the left side of the screen, all the way down to the bottom of the property, which is connected to Jefferson. The front property line is the property line adjacent to Jefferson Avenue, so this property line here. The new main residence will be located here more towards the top of the property. And there will be a two-car garage, detached garage here with a new driveway off of Jefferson. So that's this here. The driveway will likely require grading and retaining walls, with portions of those being in the right-of-way. The applicant intends to remove approximately 9 trees, with 6 of them being considered significant. The trees are located within the area of the proposed development, both the main house and some of the driveway. It is possible that additional trees will need to be removed to accommodate utilities and the septic system. And an arborist report will be required to evaluate the potential impacts, construction impacts on all of the trees. The height of the residence will be approximately 28 feet tall at the highest point. It'll be a split level design with multiple levels separated by interior stairs. The design does include tall crawl space areas, which increase the height of the residence and contribute to the mass and bulk. And the residential design guidelines do encourage reducing mass and bulk on hillside lots. So the ASRB should discuss the design as it relates to massing and bulk. The materials for both the residence and detached garage will be a hardy plank cement siding with composition shingle roof. There will also be some extensive decks on the rear and side of the residence. So that's some elevated decks here off of both kind of levels of the home with some staircases that eventually lead down to this detached garage. The proposed color of the cement siding is light. It's a light color, and so it should be reconsidered to maybe be a darker color, which would blend more into the natural environment. And it would also help with the visual impact of the mass and bulk. The project will likely require additional planning entitlements, which would be reviewed by the Planning Commission at the formal design review stage. And that could include a variance to develop within steep slopes, a setback variance, and a height variance for the detached garage. But that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sarah. Does any member of the board have questions of staff? Nope. Question about parking. Did you want to ask it? You can ask it. Oh.
Just reminded me of the question.
Parking is well-defined in the code in terms of requirements. There's not a case of variance that could modify that or lessen the need for parking requirements and turnaround requirements. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah, there's 4 spaces is what would be required.
Okay.
They have a 2-car garage. It's not really clear though where the other 2 spaces would be. Because there's likely a need for some turnout areas. So that would need to be further clarified on the plan.
Okay, good.
By code, it requires the 4 spaces, and so potentially they could stack the other 2 spaces in front of the garage. That's fairly common, what we see in Woodside. But it just realistically, in terms of a driveway like this, navigating steeper slopes with a curve in the driveway, the applicants should probably explore some area in which cars can turn around and drive frontwards down to Jefferson, especially then even when you get down to Jefferson and you're still backing out into that right of way, could be difficult for people to navigate. So the applicant is encouraged at the next stage to really look at how they would maneuver vehicles there.
But is that something that the fire department comes out and?
Well,
So it's more. than-
it may not necessarily be a fire district requirement. Something they will review the application so they can comment on it. The applicant can also go to the fire district and but when they're looking for turnarounds, they're typically looking for what's required for our fire truck turnaround on site. And I'm going to defer to the fire district. It's always important for every applicant to go speak with the fire district. So in general, my understanding is that if a building requires a fire truck to drive more than 150 feet onto the property, they will require a fire truck turnaround on site. And it's possible that given the proximity of these structures to roadways, they may not actually decide that they need to physically drive onto the site to fight a fire.
Is that how far is it from? the roadway?
So we're looking at 30 feet or so. So
But this is a circulation question, not a parking spot count question.
it's correct. It's more just, that when someone gets into a situation like this, from a design perspective, site planning, community character, you do want to look at how a site can actually function. Otherwise, what we've seen in older cases like this, I'm familiar with a few sites at least, that will just stop using the garage because it's just too hard to get in and out of. And those are just really older driveways. We want to try to be careful of creating that situation because there's not a lot of off-site parking options if people find that it's very difficult to navigate to and from the garage.
From a parking spot count perspective, though, two in the front of the garage, two in the garage makes four.
That's correct.
So I do agree that circulation is a different.
And then just to remind everyone, just make sure they're speaking closely into the microphones for anyone on Zoom as well as for the recordings. It's important. But that's correct. By a code issue, but from a circulation, site design, site planning issue, commenting on providing some maneuverability could be made by the ASRB.
Separate question, but related to variances. So there's, I believe is variance, identified potential variance for setbacks, slope, and accessory structure height.
Correct.
You offer any guidance in terms of whether we should dwell on that for extended period of time or simply accept that a variance will be necessary and we can focus on other topics?
I don't.
The
We often go down rabbit.
so the ASRB is not asked to look to make findings for variances, whether it's at this stage or the formal design review stage. Understanding that a project does need some discretionary variance, the review and findings that need to be made. You look at the project overall and see if it's appropriate for the site. So something that requires a lot of grading and giant retaining walls are things that the ASRB may opine on, given just from a building design or site planning standpoint. So understanding that at this point, it is important to understand that these variances would be required, and then therefore, is the proposed development appropriate for the site?
All right. Any other questions? Nope. All right. With that, we'll move on to presentation from the applicant.
Oh, for us?
Yes.
Okay, so,
Can you
Come to the
step to the microphone? Yep.
It's all being recorded and people on Zoom.
okay. Hey, my name is Catherine. I am the property owners, and this is something that we wanted to build for ourselves. Again, this is in our, sorry, I'm really short. Okay, so this is our more like a preliminary design. One thing that we did not actually highlighted the extra parking space is because we have not finished the percolation test, which is going to be scheduled. Sorry, it has already been scheduled on the 2nd of August. So once we have the trench map confined, so we know that where we can actually have the space for the for trenching and where are the remaining space, we will be able to define the extra 2 parking space. And that's one thing. And then the second thing that also will allow us to know that, how close to the ground we are, should we actually build so far top? I think that the position where the building currently is also allow the, I would say, trench to actually go down naturally through the slope, which will helps with the overall, having the septic tank to be able to pass the design guidelines of the San Mateo County. That's the whole purpose where that sits, and also the multiple levels. And one more thing that we wanted to actually build this way, more like high up to the ground, is actually, I would say, minimize the disturb to the natural ground. That's what we wanted to. And so we actually use a lot more underpin and be able to, reduce the amount. Since that most of our building construction area will be at the over 35% slope area. And you can see that the plan, the lot is mostly of that, percentage anyway, but we will still wanted to maintain like less disturbance as possible. Oh, one more thing, we did actually ask for the fire department regarding the turnaround. So they did say that if they need to service our main property from the front, they actually will be able to access easily through the Delaware side instead of needing a turnaround side point, as well as the from Jefferson to the ground. They did say that for that amount of slope for them to actually turn around, it's going to be a pretty significant in order for them to actually be able to make that turn. So it's likely, so they said that in practice, they will be actually, hooking the lines, and since that is within the 150 feet of the length.
You've done your homework.
Yes.
All right. Is that, does that
Yeah,
conclude your
yeah, that's
presentation?
pretty much it. And then again, we are happy to accept, your recommendation in terms of the design guidelines. This is our preliminary. The only thing our kids really want is actually have a huge deck, which we're providing a lot of running grounds. And then we will have some paved area for extra parking near their parking lot. There will be additional design details where how to connect from the parking, the garage to the main house. As you can see, just with the one flight of stairs is not going to work. But again, we will wait for that until we finish the percolation test. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Does
Any-
anyone on the board have questions regarding this application?
Two questions.
Mhm.
Have you done any neighborhood outreach and talked to the neighbors or about what you're planning on doing?
Oh, yes, yes. We did talk to our neighbors. I think there's only one neighbor we can potentially see on the other side. And they just say that, oh, do whatever you want. We are more than like 80 feet away from each other. So I can only see their abandoned, I would say, jacuzzi pool that they are no longer actually in service. Yeah, so that was their vacation home anyway. And then also that from Jefferson's point of view, from that role, we are more than vertically over 40 feet above the above the street. So where we actually have our house at, we can't really see any of our neighbor. So, and then they wouldn't be able to see us either. So unless they pretty much like go all the way and stand in there and look.
And the other question, would you be amenable to changing the color to be more in line with the residential guidelines to just,
Oh, yeah,
I know
yes,
it's nice that the house is not that large. So when we talk about mass, it's only about a 2,000 square foot house.
Yeah,
So it's
so-
not, I mean, it looks from the picture, it looks massive, but
Mhm.
2,000 is not that large. But even still, would you be amenable to, having a little darker color?
Yes, 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 yes. So in fact that we will prefer to have a darker color. This color was provided by the architect, which they think that it's more of a economic, option for them to go with. But then we are, amendable for any color that's provided and recommended for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? That means I go and then you come up with a question.
That's probably how.
One of the things that Sarah pointed out in her report was about just the mass of building a property on a steep slope requires, you have to lift up the foundation in order to achieve a level platform.
Mhm.
You take those piers combined with the crawl space, combined with the first floor, the second floor, the third floor. It's a lot of vertical height. And I know one of the recommendations that she specifically asked us to consider in the report was, reducing that mass by lowering the height of the crawl space or even lowering the height of the entire structure into the hillside. I know that would go against your desire to have minimal impact, but it may have a beneficial result in terms of the
Yes.
presentation of the house.
We have thought about it, and then again, we would reconsider that point. We're definitely amendable for different foundation design, but we wanted to save all this change until we pass the percolation test because our first priority is to be able to build. So I think that whatever the change map comes up to be, we pretty much follow the guidelines. If they really need additional lines through the foundation, and then we really need to lift that height for the septic tanks and all that to actually go through, and then we will maintain the current, foundation. If it's not, we are willing to actually go lower with, smaller cross space and then to reduce that. Another thing we have also thought about is actually breaking different colors or different material. For example, between different level, if they were built between, for example, they can be, I would say, concrete boards versus like stuccos versus there are other building exterior material or even sidings, all of that wood or different colors that will really break up the massiveness as well in terms of appearance.
I know Member Middleman has firsthand knowledge on septic systems on steep slopes. I don't know if you have a suggestion or want to share your experience.
I'm painfully surprised that they're not served by sewer. They have the entire site surveyed. That's step one. I did not have the entire site surveyed. It is a huge unknown. Because
No, it
Oh.
is not a huge unknown. So it's this. So the lot was actually, so we only bought one of the two lots that was available to be on sale about 2 years ago. That two lot was subdivided about 2-3 years ago. Originally was in one lot. I think 10 years back in 1990s or 1989s, some developers has already gone through this process, and at the time that the percolation test results come back to be about a B level, which is not, great. The reason being is actually the second lot that was horizontal versus the vertical lot that we have in an L shape. We didn't take the L with the horizontal side, we only take the vertical side, which will really help us with the percolation test because per test result that they were done, the percolation were done with multiple holes, right? And then there were 6 holes per lot. And at the time that our lot was graded to be 8 was pretty much the best results that we can have with the percolation, where the other lot was rated pretty low. So that's why when they averaging together and they give us like a mediocre result, which resulted in that this combined L-shaped lot was not able to support a 3-bedroom houses, which is the minimum bedroom required for the septic tank design. And based on if we're only considering our lot currently after they subdivided, it's really likely that we will be able to get the rate that we want it to be. So we actually, we supposed to actually start this percolation test last year around October, but the rain really short that actually arrived about a week before it's supposed to. And so we waited for almost another year to actually get it done this year instead of last year.
Do you have a date scheduled for
Uh,
that?
yeah, so they did say that it was, what I have noted down was in the first week of August. The lawn has already been mowed over this weekend, and then we will have a site visit with the inspector as well as the as well as the people who is doing the actual digging itself next week.
similar story to me. But yeah, I was going to say that August might be a little early, but if you're confident based on the lot split that you'll get the A perk that you previously got in those holes on that lot, I'd put my money on that.
I have a B
But
rating on my lot.
I think when they actually go inspect on the site, the people who's going to actually do the digging, that they are from I forgot their
Steve
name.
Herzl and Pat Dempsey?
Exactly.
Good, then
Yes,
you have the
yes.
right
So
people.
she said that he will be able to pinpoint out whether this is the best condition or they should come back a month later. So I'm in a good hand. And then the engineer is done by Lee and Brace, who has been done like multiple, I would say more than 50 projects in Woodside already. So hopefully combine the experience of both companies, we will be able to come up something.
I think you're gonna be okay.
But it
Hope
does
so.
sound that some of these decisions, of the feedback you received through staff report, some of these decisions are pending your percolation results.
Exactly. So I think that because from the original the original property design back in like 20 years ago, and the percolation design was the failure resulting from they're not able to build anything. To take their lesson and drive from there is actually we will prefer to actually have the percolation done and be able to make the change map, accordingly. And then from the change map, we will design, well, we will work with the Lee and Brace, and then our architect and structural engineer to come up with something that will meet the guidelines from the city, less massive, but still be able to, amend, the length of change that we need for it.
Yeah, essentially where the septic system goes defines where the grading and drainage will go, which will define where the building will go.
Yeah. So it's likely that the septic tank could be underneath or right next to it. So that's why we just have a really tall foundation currently across space, just because we just don't know the location.
But that said, this design still is less than or equal to the maximum height allowance for the zoning district, correct?
It is still within the maximum height, yes, except the garage is not. I think the garage was like a feet or two above, but then the main building height, it's currently at 28. I think they are within your guidelines.
Yes.
Yes. We actually wasn't, so Sarah actually caught it before I came, so I was like, oh, good.
I actually appreciate the fact that they're choosing to do less cut by putting the house up on grade. I think it is the correct decision and aligns with the residential design guidelines around sustainability and character.
Just question, Sarah, with regards to the height variance for the garage or the accessory structure, the issue there is on the south side because of just because of slope, that the height is in excess of what the code allows.
Yeah, it is the south side, so the side closest to Jefferson, and it's, they have that retaining wall.
Right.
And that's really just so that they can have, a garage that they can drive into. So it's actually just a plate height. So for accessory structures, there's a maximum plate height of 11 feet. And then also maximum ridge height of 17 feet. So they're meeting their like ridge height, but the plate height is taller. It's probably closer to 14 or 15 feet, I think. So the variance would be for that additional plate height on that side.
If they were in the Glens, which is not too far away, they wouldn't require a variance for that, would they?
Potentially, there's some different requirements in the Glens, yeah, for garages, yeah.
Same area though.
Any other questions? Or no, sorry, on the board.
No, not really.
Okay. Member,
I don't think many.
uh,
I mean,
There's nobody online.
Oh, one more thing, we did talk about the roof design for the garage. So if becomes the variance of the garage height cannot be approved, we are okay to change different design of the garage. So for example, instead of like a traditional one, we can make it one to be taller and slope all the way to the south point, which will reduce the total height as well if you measure it. this way. So,
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure that there are more solutions than the problems. So I just finger crossed for the percolation, more like.
But in concept, right, with assuming that the perk test comes back the way of like hoping the perk test comes back, there will be small tweaks, but this is basically the concept that you're proposing that would probably not substantially change.
If they were passing, so
Yes, assuming passing.
Oh, okay. Assuming passing, yes, assuming passing, then we will go through your guidelines again, right? To see what can be amended for and what we would like to keep. And then we can drive that conversation by then. But we're happy to discuss every single point. I think that. And then also, we do want to have a better garden, better front. And so how to connect the garage area to the top. This will really allow us to fully use the land instead of just abandon the garage. And so I think that will be something we should be considered. Yes. Mhm. So that's all on the pending stage. And then my kids already have a list of things that they want, like, their I would say basketball range, something like that. Barbecue range, they already have all of those. Yeah. So we haven't put none of that in.
I think we should have our conversation with the assumption that septic passes, and this is in the most part what the plan would be, just more refined and formal.
All right, before we get there, we'll open discussion for public comment. I see no one in the
You
room.
guys can sit down.
We do have 2 people online. For those online, please use the raise hand feature if you'd like to make a comment. And no raised hands.
Raised hands. We'll give people a second to look for the raised hand icon on the screen.
Can I ask you a question? When do I need to start doing the poll? Should I wait until my percolation test done and then I have the final design, or I should do it now, which is the maximum possible height?
We'll get to that stage. At this point, they'll focus on looking at the concept design. Then after that, you can work with staff and we'll talk about this story pole installation time.
Okay.
You can wait till after the perk test.
Yes. I don't want to spend double the money. Thank you.
Okay. So no online raised hands.
No raised hands.
Right, with that, close the public comment and shift to board discussion. Would anyone on the board like to kick us off in terms of comments?
When I drove past the site this afternoon, I actually confused the site with the site next to it because the way the layout is, I almost thought this was a deconstruction of the house that was next door and a garage and house in place of the existing structures. In fact, I asked Sage that when I showed up at town hall. It is, the differences between those 2 properties is the property that exists is built into the hill. This is built on top of the hill. I think it goes along the spirit of the residential design guidelines more from a conservation and sustainability perspective. On the light touch on the land as much as possible while still being below the maximum residence height. I think the light color matches the houses that I did see on the street. And it also will equate to less energy use. If I'm essentially not absorbing as much energy from the sun. I have no problem with the color, especially as we sit in a white building ourselves. It is a little early to come to conceptual, but I commend you for coming to conceptual and getting our feedback on this. Considering the many moving parts of building on a slope lot. But in a refined, I think a landscape plan that obfuscates the piers in some way would help alleviate that bulk. And there's a good amount of space in between to do something creative. Yeah,
Thank you.
my initial thoughts.
Vice Chair Cameron?
Well, overall, I like the design and I'm just thrilled. I mean, we need more housing in the town. So this was a place that there wasn't a house. We're not tearing something down. So we're getting an extra, which is wonderful. The size is, you know, not overwhelming. You know, my concerns are possibly, well, the color. I mean, I think we need to stick with what our guidelines are, and our guidelines say that we'd like it to be darker and more natural, I mean, more fitting into the landscape. So the white is probably not going to fly, but since you're willing to, you know, do up some of the colors and stuff, I think that's fine. I'm fine at this conceptual stage. I mean, at one point, I would like to see it before it does go on to the next level. I would like to see the story poles, the materials board, you know, another design if for some reason you're changing the different sightings, what you're doing, because you said that might be a possibility. You know, just sort of kind of look that over, not a, what would you call that, where we just do what, an initial?
You know, all of these details, a lot of details are required with formal design review. Story poles are not installed at this time. So any recommendations made by the board here, if it's to move on to formal design review, that would come back to the ASRB before going to the planning commission with all of those details. And then that could be made a recommendation to the planning commission at that time. And story poles would be installed as well at that time.
And then the trees marked, the trees that might be,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Just so we'd have a chance to walk back through the site and take another look.
Yep, and we can, you know, similar to a project we reviewed, maybe it was the last meeting, that we'll make it very clear, depending on where this project goes today, but if it's moved on to formal design review, it'll be made very clear once this additional information is provided, there could be other comments made by the ASRB based on that information.
That's the route.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'll echo comments from my fellow members with regards to just general aesthetics and style of the house. I have no concerns. I think it fits fine within our design guidelines. I have less concerns about color, looking at the palette closely online. I think it was described as white in the staff report, but clearly the proposed color of the siding.
The colors were Swiss
Quite a bit.
coffee, which is white for the trim, and then another lighter white for it. So even though it looks gray in the renderings, it's the colors they presented are white.
Yep.
Yes, but with
No, go ahead.
respect, quote the design guidelines. Lighter colors should be used in settings where they are appropriate, such as meadows as opposed to redwood forest. This house sits in a meadow.
So there's a couple of things in the design guidelines regarding colors. In terms of meadow, I think redwood forest, some of that also looks at, you should look at hillside development versus flatter lots. It also goes into using lighter colors for architectural design. So the color that's most appropriate for that architectural design, otherwise looking to use darker earth tone colors. So for example, that we tend to fall back on a lot, the kind of the George Washington Smith architect style houses, Santa Barbara kind of known houses. So that it's more appropriate to use the white with that type of architectural style. Whereas when you have other buildings, whether they're ranch buildings or kind of farmhouse buildings or different styles, something to blend more into the hillside is what is encouraged by the RDG. But when it's appropriate for the site and the architectural style, lighter colors can be used.
Thank you for that clarification. Continue my thoughts. So just purely from a style standpoint, I have no concerns whatsoever with regards to adherence to the guidelines. I am, however, concerned by the number of variances expected or needed in order to execute on this. The setback variance, what impact that would have on the footprint of the house. I'm sure that the garage height variance could be addressed. Slope variance, I don't know if Sarah or Sage, you could sort of expand on what the impact of that would be if that were denied.
If that were denied, this is a site in which it is likely findings can be made to approve a project, not necessarily this one, but just to qualify a project to fit on the site. There's virtually no way to build on the site without going into the steep slopes. And so really that's what variances are clearly intended for. Then you look at the project specifics and is the specific project appropriate to make the findings for the site? So often some of the things discussed, reducing the amount of impacts to the overall site through grading, that could be a case that is better made than a project that just kind of scars up the entire site, sets up a bunch of terraces and flat areas everywhere. That may be more difficult for the findings to be made. It's likely findings could be made for a project on a site, given that without the variance, there wouldn't be a way to build on it.
Okay. But I think the approach to do a split level here is completely respectful of the slope.
Yep.
Okay.
Just a suggestion, I mean, you don't have to go. But if you wanted to hide those poles, and I know you were talking about landscaping in between, you could put up a very small family vineyard where the vines would, because on that hill, you've got the sun coming down between the garage and the house, not, which would kind of screen as they grow in. It sort of screens in between, but it's just a thought.
Yeah, that will be something interesting. We should think about that. That will add some privacy to him, and then he can make the garage into an office or partial. Add another one.
Help me understand why this project may need a setback variance. Is it related to the heights?
It
setback?
could be. It's something, so we'll get more details on that. It's something that we'll work with the applicant. To minimize the amount of variance is always a good thing. And we will, right now, just the amount of information, we don't have the grading plan yet. It is related to the height, specifically to the side setbacks. So we want to make sure that any portions of the building that are over 17 feet tall can meet the 22.5-foot setbacks.
I guess I'm misreading the property information sheet.
Okay. Sage, have you captured?
Yes. So to summarize, the applicant is commended for the proposed size of the residence. It's modest and fits within the site. Also, the style and design of the residence is consistent with the residential design guidelines. So I've heard some comments on recommendations, and these are, I'll read back and ask if this is the decision of the majority of the board. The applicant is recommended to look at ways to break up the massing of the house. This could include things such as landscape screening at the lower level near the crawl space and piers to minimize the view of that area. Also, as part of landscaping, vines could be used as a way to help break up that lower level. The applicant has mentioned looking at ideas to use different materials and or colors that could help break up the mass as well. Another thing that will be looked at is for the applicant to work with staff to try to avoid the need for a setback variance. The last thing I'll note that was brought up earlier, once the applicant determines where the septic system needs to be sited, that they should finalize their circulation and parking plan, as well as, if they choose to do so, look at, they could maybe lower the building a little bit into the site if necessary. That would be up to them.
I don't know if I would recommend lowering the building to increase cut, but having a circulation plan would be nice.
Is there anything else?
Nope.
No.
No?
So then, at this point, story poles are not installed.
Right.
And there's not a significant number of comments that feel like they need to be addressed at the conceptual level. Actually may be more beneficial at the formal level, given the amount of information that will come in. The board, with these recommendations, can move this onto the formal design review, and also noting that once all the additional information is provided, that the board may have additional comments based on those project details.
Yes. So the motion would be that we move to advance this to formal.
Formal with the ASRB.
Correct.
Yeah, with the, looking at the materials board.
Right, with,
the
it would have
the
all, it would have
final
all of those
design
details.
And parking and all of that. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think that's a good way to move forward.
Motion's made.
And so, Chair Lindsay made the motion?
did.
Okay, great.
Well, I think I did.
Yes, that's fine. I just want to make sure.
I'll second is, just want to make sure that we're not recommending against the design guidelines with reducing the height by going into the hill.
Yes, that was not something that would be recommended as something that needs to be done. It would be up to the applicant to explore that if they wanted to.
Did
And
you
I-
second?
Chair Lindsay,
Yes.
Vice Chair Comra,
Yes.
Member Middleman.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Right,
Good
so
luck.
we'll have a letter out to you guys the next day or two, and then you can meet with Sarah and or myself, and we'll follow up the next steps.
Bye-bye.
That was the only item on the public hearing today. So with that, I can adjourn the meeting at 5:18 PM.
Thank you for your time.